Okay, so first of all, what's today?
Your birthday.
Your birthday.
It's my birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. Hopkins. Okay. Okay, so today's topic is monopolistic competition. Okay, so we've studied perfect competition now, and we've studied monopoly, which are two industries or industry types which are rarely encountered in the real world. Okay. The two that we're about to study, oligopoly and monopolistic competition, are what most industries look like. Most industries are either oligopolies or monopolistically competitive. Okay, so this is more like the real world. Okay, so if you take perfect competition and think about it, monopolistic competition is a lot like perfect competition in lots of ways, except one. Okay, now one difference causes there to be several other differences as a result. Okay, so the main difference between perfect competition and monopolistic competition is that in perfect competition, firms produce identical products. Okay, so we assume, for example, that in the market for corn, every ear of corn is exactly the same no matter which firm produces it. So as a result, the only thing that consumers care about in deciding which business to buy from is the price that's charged. And so the price converges to one price that every farmer in that case has to charge, and therefore we say those farmers are price takers. They have no pricing power, or what we call monopoly power. Okay. The difference in monopolistic competition is that businesses can differentiate their products. Okay, the products are similar in monopolistic competition. For example, cell phones, right? All cell phones are basically the same product for the most part, right? You can text, you can call people, you can use them for a few other things. Basically, they all do pretty much the same thing, but they're not exactly the same. There are slight differences between, iPhones and Samsungs. iPhones work, Samsungs blow up. Right? In addition, in addition to those kinds of differences, there are real differences between iPhones and Samsungs that make us prefer one or the other, right? And because we prefer one or the other, that gives those firms a little bit of pricing power. Okay, they don't have to accept the market price. Okay, because there are certain customers who are going to be drawn to their particular differentiation, the way that they've differentiated the product. As a result, they get a little bit of monopoly power. Okay, that's kind of funny, isn't it? So, all right. So, as we know from monopoly, okay, when a firm is able to influence the price, so this is the monopolistic firm, monopolistic competitive firm. Okay. When it's able to influence the price of its good, it has some pricing power or monopoly power, its demand curve is going to be downward sloping. So the monopolistically competitive firm is going to have a downward sloping demand curve. Okay. And as we learned in monopoly, if the demand curve is downward sloping, the marginal revenue curve will be below the demand curve and also be downward sloping. Okay. So there you have that. Okay. The cost structure is the same. Okay, with your average total cost curve here and your marginal cost curve here, cutting the average total cost curve at its minimum. Okay. What I've drawn here is a monopolistically competitive situation in a firm in long-run equilibrium. Okay. So we would say that the monopolistically competitive firm will earn a zero economic profit. Okay, will produce where price is equal to average total cost, and therefore it makes a zero economic profit, but not at the minimum of average total cost. Okay, so here you see this is price MC monopolistically for a monopolistically competitive firm, and price PC for a perfectly competitive firm, which would produce at the minimum of average total cost. So you can see the monopolistically competitive firm can charge a price that's a little bit higher than the monopolist would charge. Excuse me, the perfect competitor would charge. Sorry about that. Okay, the price is slightly higher in monopolistic competition for the good, okay? And the business is going to produce a little bit less output than the perfectly competitive business would. Okay, so the price is a little higher. Okay, so whereas in perfect competition, the price is equal to marginal cost, in monopolistic competition, the price is greater than marginal cost at the equilibrium quantity here. Okay, so we call it the markup. The difference in the monopolistic competition, the difference between the price and the marginal cost is called markup. Because that's a definition you need to know. Okay, so the business charges a higher price. The difference between its price and marginal cost is markup. It also restricts output, which means it could produce more. If in a perfectly competitive situation, it would produce more at QPC, okay, but it doesn't. We call that excess capacity. The business could produce more, but it doesn't. It has excess capacity, okay? And so these are two ways that monopolistic competition is bad for the consumer, okay? Because first, there's less output to consume, and second, that output costs more, or is higher priced for the consumer. Okay, so those are two differences between monopolistic competition and perfect competition. Okay? Now, monopolistic competition, though, is good for the consumer in other ways. Okay, so and then the main one is that consumers are able to do what? They're able to have
price discrimination.
Well, not necessarily, there could be price discrimination, but that would be good for the business, right? What do consumers get? What?
Better products.
They get better products. Yeah, they get more choice, right? So you can get the phone that blows up or the one that doesn't, right? You can have the iPhone that does certain things, right? Or you can go and get a Samsung and it does other things. It's compatible with different kinds of systems that you might use and so forth and so on, right? Androids and so forth and so on. So what monopolistic competition gives us is an environment where consumers can better meet their needs, right? There are more choices. And because we're different and we have different needs and different wants, right? In a monopolistically competitive situation, there are better outcomes for consumers because they can find they're better able to find the stuff that meets their needs. Okay, so that's good. But they have to charge higher prices and there's less output. That's bad. Okay, so here in equilibrium, you have the price. The average total cost curve in monopolistic competition is going to be tangent to the demand curve. The monopolistic competitor chooses output at the same way everyone else does, where marginal cost equals marginal revenue here, and then gets the price at the demand curve here. Okay. Why does the monopolistic competitor earn a zero profit even when he has monopoly power? Because there is competition. Okay. So the competition is always going to compete the price down to zero economic profit. Robbie, you cracking your knuckles really threw me off there a little bit. All right, so let's think about what happens in monopolistic competition in the short run and in the long run. Okay, so imagine we have a situation where the demand for, let's call this cell phones, okay? The demand for cell phones increases, okay, from D1 to D2. Okay. It's going to cause the marginal revenue curve to do what? The marginal revenue curve is going to shift out from MR1 to MR2. Which is going to cause in the short run the price to rise Okay, and the quantity to rise and the price to rise. Following me? Which means that the business at this higher price is going to be making what? A profit, something like this. Now, another assumption in monopolistic competition is that businesses make, that entry and exit is free for businesses, just like in perfect competition. So just as in perfect competition, when there are profits, the profits act like a magnet. They attract new businesses into the industry. As those new businesses enter the industry, that's going to eat into the demand of this firm's sales, right? They're going to lose sales to the entering businesses, right? Causing their demand curve to do what? Shift back into the left, okay? Until we are back at a situation where the demand curve is tangent to the average total cost curve, and we have a price equal to average total cost, and the business is making a zero economic profit. It would be the opposite with losses, okay? If there was a decrease in demand that caused losses, that would cause firms to exit, causing the price to rise as those firms who remain in the industry gain the demand away from businesses who are leaving.
Why is the demand curve tangent to the ATC?
Because this process, this is a good question, this process of entry will continue as long as there are what? As long as there are profits, right? Okay, and so theoretically what should happen is it should demand, in this case, when there are profits, should decrease for this firm, right? Until there are zero economic profits, and then that process of entry ends because there's no more incentive to enter the industry. Okay. Stop.